there's so many little things that you have to do in childcare to do things the right way. And we have to apply that too with our teachers and to make sure that, hey, they have to have the right state of mind. They have to be happy in order for that classroom to do well. You know, their mood and their attitudes and their quality of training dictate how those children are doing. If we have to do right by the children, we have to do right by the teachers. So that's an extremely important aspect, and we continue to really work on.
Welcome to the Art of Franchise Marketing. Each episode takes a deep dive into the franchise space and explores how the biggest and best brands handle national branding, franchise development, employee recruitment, and localized marketing on a daily basis. This podcast is brought to you by NetSertive, a localized digital marketing partner for franchise networks. NetSertive's Madeleine Park talks shop with franchise executives to discuss what's working, what's not, and answers the question, what else can you be doing to excel at the art of franchise marketing?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art of Franchise Marketing. I'm your host, Madeleine Zook with NetSertive, and today we have Amyn from Ivy Kids. Amyn is the CEO, and we're going to take a deep dive into the brand, why kids services, and how marketing works when you're involving little ones that don't have a lot of control. So, Amyn, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So talk to me about how you got into franchising. What was the journey to get there? I always love asking people because it's never like a straight path. It's always like, and then I found franchising. So how did it happen for you?
Yeah, so I would say franchising, it definitely was not a straight path for me or for my family for that matter. We kind of stumbled into it. My relationship with Ivy Kids goes back to when I was in middle school and in high school. And that was around the time where my family thought of the idea of opening a childcare center. From that experience, my brother and I, us being young and impressionable, we learned a lot about starting a business for the first time, all the sweat, the tears that go into it. And we opened that first school in 2005, and it was a great success. From there, I went off to college, worked in finance and investment banking, and then had an opportunity to help grow the brand, which I fell in love with back then. And when we joined, we thought, hey, how do we want to grow this in the right way? And just thinking about that entrepreneurial journey of opening our first school, the feel of having an owner there with children, we thought, hey, franchising is a great way to do this. When parents walk in, it's not just a member of the corporate team. It's a real owner that's there, that really cares about them, that knows that family member. And it was like our first journey with opening a first school. And I think that really resonated with us and led to why we wanted to grow this and why we're still in franchising today.
That's awesome. And I love the notion of wanting to have the owner there being involved, because I think a lot of times when businesses decide whether or not they want to do franchising, they worry that if they get more people involved, more owners, that they're going to lose the value of the brand. And I mean that in a way of they lose some sort of quality control, or they lose, the ability to just in general control operations in the brand, which can definitely mean something, especially when you're in, say, like quick service restaurants. It takes takes one bad owner to bring a whole Chipotle down, right? But with child services, that is kind of a flip, because you're right. I could care less if there was a member of a corporate team where I'm taking my children. Probably wouldn't even want to take them there, because I'm like, all right, they're just another, number in a spreadsheet. Whereas when you're working with something that's the owners there, they're involved, you feel that sense of care and that sense of almost security. So how many locations do you guys have now?
Yeah, so today we have 17 locations, and they're throughout Texas. So we're in Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio currently.
That's great. And before we kind of get into more about like growth goals, talk to me about Ivy Kids. What is your mission? What's your brand stand for? What did you envision and execute on when, building this child center?
Yeah, so for Ivy Kids, we're completely focused on putting the child first and to have the highest quality education for each child that walks into an Ivy Kids. If you look at daycare traditionally, and I try and use daycare and childcare, as very different terms, that
Mhm.
really was the market early on, where children would go in and they would just be sat and they would just be observed, and then parents would pick them up. And there'd be no idea from the parents of what children do throughout the day, what they were learning. And we tried to flip that model on its head.
Mhm.
Children come in, they have a curriculum. We develop the curriculum in house. I think it's based on great research. It's very active. We do enrichment where we do science and Spanish for the children. And the parents actually get camera access so they can see exactly what's going on through the day. And through our app, they get pictures. They can see how much their child ate, how much their child slept. So all of our decisions, when it comes to our operation, when it comes to our quality, when it comes to discussions internally, it's always focused around, hey, what's the best thing for the children? What's the best thing for the parents? And I think that's our guiding light. When we're growing, hey, we have, optimistic, or we have, real growth goals. But a lot of that is also centered around, hey, how do we do this in a way where we're not outstripping our support? We're not outstripping the quality that we provide. How do we bring owners that really see that vision and are like-minded with what we're trying to do so we have responsible growth?
I think that that's incredible. First of all, I think the name is awesome because I think there's just that stereotype that eventually one day if your kid goes to an Ivy League school, you are winning. So it's definitely a great play on that. And
Yeah.
also the idea of not just having the child be watched, because obviously my before I became a parent, that's what I figured. I was like, daycare, you drop them off, they play, you make sure they don't cry, and you pick them up. And now being a parent of three, I'm like, that's if I'm paying any sort of money and dropping my kid off with anyone that's not me, I want it to be beneficial in the best way possible. So it's very new to me to realize that you can have I don't want to say daycare, but a daycare that is actually more like school or a childcare. So I have a 4-year-old who's not yet ready for kindergarten, but she goes to a childcare center that does have the curriculum, and she's learning, and we call it school. And whereas
Hmm.
it is a daycare, but to have that curriculum makes a hell of a lot of a difference. And it's funny, it's so great these days now that you have the camera access, the pictures, because most parents can be like, oh, I didn't have that growing up, that sort of thing. um,
Hmm.
and I used to do that dropping my dog off at daycare, and now I'm like, people drop their kids off and don't know what they're doing during the day. It's
Yeah.
one thing to have a 7th grader come home and be like, "Well, what'd you do?" "Oh, nothing." But when,
Yep.
the child maybe can't communicate that, or you're just getting nothing, it's important that you definitely have a pulse on that.
Yeah.
Especially when they can spend up to 40 hours a week there, which is a huge influence on them. So I definitely
Yeah.
love the brand and the idea of just let's put the child first at all times. So
Hmm.
it makes sense what you're talking about, bringing in the right owners, definitely having that sense of care. So what is your growth plan look like? Because right now you're just in Texas, and I say just in Texas like Texas isn't the biggest friggin' state in the entire universe. Um,
Yeah.
but are there talks to branch out, or is it are you going to grow more sub locally and out from the networks there?
Yeah. So, I think we're really excited about our future locations that are coming up. We're actually going to be opening our first school outside of Texas, which is in Johns Creek, which is kind of that North Atlanta area.
Okay.
And that school is going to be opening up in 2 months. So we're really excited about that. I think it's a great location. Parents are extremely excited about an Ivy Kids there. The franchise owner, they're really great individuals, and I think we've got a great growth plan for Georgia. We're also have an agreement signed for the Orlando area as well in Florida. And we're going to be growing in Austin as well as California. So we're
Wow.
looking at the Orange County area. I've heard a lot of stories about California. Not going to go into detail about the extent of the horror stories,
Yeah.
but it sounds like a really attractive, high demand market, and parents, in these areas really value high quality education, and that's what we're trying to provide at the end of the day. So, I think we're a great match, and I mean, our goals right now, we'll be at 30 locations by the end of 2025. So I think that's, you know, we're trying to teeter the line between growth and not outstripping our support. And I think we've shown a history of doing that, and I think we're going to continue to do that.
That's great. And you bring up a good point about growing smart. I think a lot of them are, and you guys aren't, I would not say emerging because your first one opened in 2005, but a lot of emerging brands, they get very excited when they see the franchise fee and people wanting to buy, and they mistake franchise purchases with, I think, sales, where you launch a new sweatshirt, you're like, everyone buy them. You launch a new brand and you get that mixed up with a product or a consumer service, and you're just selling as much as you can. And to your point, you can outstrip the support. And not only does it make it harder on the franchisee if they're not getting their support, but internally, yes, you understand you're stretched thin and you need more support XYZ and you need to hire. But I think that there's also a shadow that's not necessarily talked about with the current A players you may have. If you have
Hmm.
great staff and you just need more of them and all of a sudden you pile this on, there's a good chance you're going to lose those A people and be left with even less, because nobody wants, to just have more and more and more work piled on without, a game plan. So I think that that's very important piece to what you're doing. Now, my question here is, because you had the majority of locations in Texas, how difficult was it to sell outside of Texas for the first couple times? And was it a different type of candidate you were looking for? Because, they can be differ when you are a franchisee and you're being slotted in with a whole bunch of, like brands around you versus someone who's opening across the country, and it's more of a, startup feel because there is no brand recognition there. So how was that process for you guys?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think when we decided to expand to additional states, it was a real deliberate effort and strategy in order to do that.
Hmm.
Originally, when we started to grow in Texas, we had a very limited franchise marketing budget. And a lot of our franchisees came from being parents at Ivy Kids locations, right? And
Yeah.
when you're going into another state, you're going to not have that just because there's no Ivy Kids there, right?
Mhm.
So we really made a deliberate effort when it came to our branding, when it came to our franchise marketing, our website, how we we're positioning it to make sure, hey, these are the areas and these are the states that we want to target. From there, just from the initial conversations with those franchisees, I think it was really educating them early on about what our brand is about, about our curriculum, about the type of support we provide, about the facility, about some of our unique differentiators. And we want to make sure too, hey, for Discovery Day, they're visiting our school, right? They're talking to other franchisees. They really get it. And what we're looking for, I think, as far as our franchisees, they come from a variety of backgrounds. Some of them have been in early childhood education, but that's by no means a minimum threshold. They can come from a variety of fields. So I think knowing one, are they well equipped to follow a franchise model based on the questions that they're asking, based on their maybe past history in franchising? Those are great check boxes, right? Another area to look at is, do they have a passion for education? Do they have a passion for childcare? Are they volunteering? Do they talk about, them coaching their son's little league team? I think all of those components really play a role in seeing, okay, we can see this person being a successful franchisee. When we talk about our retreats, when we talk about our franchisee meetups, do their, eyes kind of widen a bit? So I think all of those kind of components have really helped. And, I think seeing those things early, them meeting our other franchise owners early on
Hmm.
gets them to understand, okay, these are those traits of success. These are the areas we should be heading towards. And that's kind of how we've been looking at growing in some of these new markets that are outside of Texas.
I like that. It's very a kind of a corporate multi-location approach, and I mean that, in a system like Starbucks that has a million locations, but they're all corporate owned, where you're being very deliberate about where you want to open. Because I think a lot of times in franchising, targeting certain areas, if you're not using brokers and you're just using kind of organic or digital efforts, can be difficult because search volume tends to be low. Um, but really pinpointing exactly the markets you want to go in and communicating it up front so that people know there is no brand awareness here. You are going to have to drop some mean marketing dollars if you want to be successful, instead of kind of always doing the rose colored glasses, which I think a lot of people, or a lot of sales people use as a tactic, is super important and clearly has worked in your favor because you're about to open in like 5 new states. So
Right.
the childcare industry is foreign to me because, as most people know, I'm in home services. So talk to me a little bit about what are some of the challenges you face when trying to market and grow in the childcare industry,
Mhm.
and when you're faced with those obstacles, what are some ways that you've overcome them?
Yeah, so I think when you are opening a new location in a new area, I think parents they want to know what they're getting into, essentially, right? They want to understand, hey, what is this curriculum all about? What do other parents think about this brand?
Right.
So there's a lot of education that you have to do before that parent makes an enrollment decision.
Hmm.
So the parent having resources about, hey, this is where our curriculum is derived from. This is the sources that support it. This is why we do STEM activities from ages 2 and up, right? This is why we've designed our facility this way. Not all parents are going to look at that. There might be one or two things that they kind of cling to, but you
Hmm.
have to make sure that, hey, that research is there. I mean, you can look at the website history and what our Georgia parents are doing, for example. They're looking at the reviews of Texas locations to
Mm.
determine if this is a high quality school. So parents are going to do that research, and you have to make sure that all of those things on your end, um, match what those parent expectations are. But also just on the boots type of community oriented marketing, very traditional type of marketing and getting your face out there actually does have a big impact. I mean, we work with our franchisees when they're about to open a school, and we work with them on identifying, hey, here are 5, 6 events that you guys need to go to. All right.
Hmm.
Just go there, have some of your Ivy Kids material, wear a polo shirt, and just introduce yourself. You know, because look, those kind of things will put a name or a face to the organization.
Right.
And parents, that's a very unique thing. Um, Parents do care about that, and most of our marketing, sure, having a nice sign, visibility, real estate's a huge component to that, but reputation is a huge part of that, and parents speaking to each other is a huge part of that. And you can see that with Google reviews and how seriously our franchise owners and we take that. So I think those are the components, and I think, look, like if you dominate that 8 to 10 minute drive time, that 2 to 3 mile radius, that's really what we're trying to create. I mean, we're a community asset for those centers, and we want to be in locations where most of our families are coming from that area and they have a very positive view of Ivy Kids. So that's why when we come in, we do events, we do festivals, we do things that don't necessarily try and drive enrollment, but really just get our name out there because we want to be viewed in the general community as an asset to that community, to that area.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and you touched on my uh next question, which would have been, you know, I'm not sending my kids anywhere if, especially if the school is brand new, but to be able to work your brand in a sense of people are going to sign up and going to go, and being okay with using the reviews from the Texas locations, which just, brings home the point of, it doesn't matter your location in Alaska, or your location in Hawaii or Florida. They all need to take advantage of the marketing package and the reviews, and all their communities within, I like what you pointed out, the 8 to 10 minute drive time, so that even if a community is, or a location is lacking, or new, it can, be picked up by the brand, I guess should say, and then their other locations. Now, with children, do you find it difficult to market or easier? Because I'd say, the demand is always there. Parents, the very stereotypical in terms of what they're looking for, what they need. They're pretty much copy and paste of one another. So do you find it easy? And I don't want to say easy, but do you find it um, very streamlined to put together a marketing package that speaks to parents and engagements? Or do you find that nowadays, with all sorts of competition, Zoom schools, nannies, daycares, that it's actually become harder because the competition is more saturated, I should say?
Yeah, I think competition is a good thing, and I think it's been a really good thing in the industry in the last 20 years. I think it's led to much more high quality childcare. The traditional daycare model just does not work and would not work even in a great location if a mom and pop opened one. So I think generally it's been good, but I think you're getting a much more educated parent than you did 15, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Parents now understand they understand the benefits of high quality education. They understand the return on investment per dollar from 0 to 5 is even higher than if they were to send their child to an elite college.
Wow.
Like that's groundbreaking type of information, but I think a lot of parents are not surprised by that anymore.
Right.
They see the benefits of group care and the child learning from their peers and being around peers and the social emotional benefits versus one-on-one type of childcare with a nanny. So I think as parents are evolving and they're gaining more knowledge, I think there should be more and more education on the benefits of childcare, and that's going to be a continue to be a boon for our industry. As far as how we market, like, it's not just materials anymore. You cannot just have a good facade. It's really about what you're doing day to day. And it's really about the quality of the operation. And I think that's what makes things more complicated is that parents are not just going to look at the website and look at Shiny. They're not just going to do a tour of the school. It's asking the other parents around. It's checking the childcare licensing website, which the states now are being much more transparent and much better at marketing to parents that, hey, you can see the quality level of schools around you. You can see the number of violations. You can see the number of visits and citations. So that's leading to a much more educated parent. And I think over time, if you're doing right by the children, if you're showing high quality, that's going to lead to enrollment. And I think that's our thing for just the industry in general.
It's interesting you bring up, it can't just be a fancy website, some materials. It has to be, a fully ingrained with your operations, because I think for most brands, their spend is uh, calculated by, the penetration and how their, engagements are doing, so that they can get to the 7 to 10 touch points so that someone eventually makes a purchase. But for you guys, your consumers are or potential, clients are seeking out those touch points. So making sure that not only are you there when they're researching, but you're able to control the narrative of whatever they see as well, which is taking the brand standards and, the importance of marketing to a whole nother level. And then my last question is, employment is difficult for everyone. Talk to me about what it's like in childcare, because there are, I'm sure, many, many other additional hoops you guys have to go through to make sure that people are qualified to work with children and, XYZ. And also, if all of a sudden a school can't hire staff or loses some of their staff, this is not just we'll cancel the jobs for the day and figure it out. This is like, this is, someone's literal school and curriculum. So talk to me about how you guys are handling that.
Yeah, these last 3 years have definitely been an education on how to retain high quality talent and keep great teachers. And we definitely feel the pains that a lot of industries and a lot of other childcare brands feel. That's for sure. Um, this has just been an unprecedented environment as far as employment and, what's out there. And, it seems like there's competition for at home type of work, Amazon delivery, and, you know, X, Y, and Z. But I do think at the end of the day, for our industry, people go into this as a calling and as a profession.
Mhm.
Teachers are passionate about this space, and they're very passionate about the age groups that they're involved in. So I think you have a unique type of calling for these folks. They want to do this. They see long-term um, employment in this industry, and there's many things that you can do as an owner, and there's many strategies for those types of for teachers to create a great environment. Our teachers, they were burdened with COVID, with worrying about children in their classroom getting COVID, but also their assistant teacher and them maybe being there or not being there in the classroom. We want to make sure, even when a school is ramping up, that when you have a new classroom open, when your school opens, that there's an assistant teacher there, and that
Mhm.
greatly helps with burnout, right? And
Yep.
greatly ensures that, hey, that 2-year-old teacher has a partner when she's trying to potty train 10 new children in the class, right? Um, so those kind of things. I think training our owners and being cognizant of the culture every day in the school, and it's really appealing to the love language of the teachers and of the staff that's there. And it's not just monetary; it's also you know recognizing birthdays, recognizing milestones, having incentives when the school does well. All of these things. It's there's so many little things that you have to do in childcare to do things the right way,
Mhm.
and we have to apply that too with our teachers, and to make sure that, hey, they have to have the right state of mind, they have to be happy in order for that classroom to do well. you know their mood and their attitudes and their quality of training dictate how those children are doing. And if we have to do right by the teachers, we have to if we have to do right by the children, we have to do right by the teachers. So that's an extremely important aspect, and we continue to really work on.
I think that is an absolutely incredible way to put that. We've all had experience with those teachers that you're like, why are you doing this anymore? Like you seem like you hate kids.
Hmm.
And then also the point of, in order to put the child first, you also have to put those teachers first, because those are the ones having the impact. Those are the ones that the child is looking to. And that's, I think, true of every industry. But it was so well said. I mean, so I appreciate that. I like marked the clip and I was like, that's the pull quote right there. So before we
Great.
end, I always kind of surprise my listeners with these questions. So it's a two-parter. So my first is, if you had a piece of advice to give to a franchisee, what would it be? And the other is, if you had a piece of advice to give to a franchisor, what would that be?
Hmm, that's a good question. For a franchisee, my piece of advice is ask for support and be open and transparent. What are your pain points? Let's start there. And let's be open and transparent as to what are the steps that you've taken and how can we work together. I always like it when franchisees reach out to me or to other folks in our system and they just tell me how they're doing.
Hmm.
um, you know because if we understand things, then we can work towards solving them. For a franchisor, I think it's be patient, and especially now, when you're just starting out, try and establish a foundation. You know, um, who are those people that are going to help support your franchisees? You know, um, how strong is your system? Um, how well are those franchisees doing? How good is that franchisee economics? So that's what I mean when I'm talking about a foundation.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, if that's not well supported, then you'll never have those dreams of that maybe huge or successful system. So,
That's incredible advice. And what it really boils down to there is, don't be afraid to ask for help. And if you're the one giving help, also you need to listen as well, because support can go both ways. So
hmm
ensuring you're building the foundation, with your franchisees in mind, and you got to start with your support system. See, your metaphor goes always. Well, I mean, thank you so much. Um, I hate to break it to you, but you have about like a year and a half to get your location ready in Philly so I can send my newest kid there. We'll be looking forward to watching Ivy kids grow. And thank you again for coming on The Art of Franchise Marketing.
thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Franchise Marketing. This show is brought to you by NetCertive. We help franchise brands and multi-location businesses run localized digital marketing at scale. To learn more, visit netcertive.com.